stuff on red light cameras as well, but we're not going to deal with that today because we have a United States congressman in our studio who is now officially a resident of Polk County. You just were telling me.
That's right. When we first got married, Kathy and I, 36 years ago, we lived in Clive, and so we're making full circle. We are now officially in Clive once again, and very happy to be a resident of Polk County.
Well, welcome back to Polk County, sir. we love having you. We love having you here. There's a few things I want to deal with, probably on a wider scale than locally first, and then we'll come back very, very local. Obviously, I don't know if you heard the interview we were doing with the mayor of Des Moines, but now we have a bunch of people occupying Des Moines City Park, for no apparent reason. And I say for no apparent reason because I had three of them in on 3 separate days last week, and my primary question is, what do you want? And not one of them was able to verbalize that. What do you think of this movement?
Well, I understand there's great frustration. People are very upset. There's, towards Wall Street, towards what they believe as, some people having more and the high unemployment. I understand there's a lot of frustration out there. I'm as frustrated as anybody, and in that sense, I certainly can I understand their feelings and why they're a lot of folks are upset. Now, just like what you said, from interviews that I've heard, people that I've talked to that have been around it, there really is no clear message. I think it's very different than the Tea Party movement, which basically believe they want their government back, they want their freedoms, they want lower taxes. They understand that America's future is on the line. But the message is so disjointed, I think you'd say, with these folks. I'm not sure exactly either what the demand is, why they're doing this, and I think it would be very helpful for their cause, whatever it is, to actually have a clear, concise message as to what they would like to see changed.
Now, this is not an unusual response from a Republican, I have to say. In recent days, the tone seems to have changed. But you see, I'm quite confused about this because you mentioned the Tea Party. Here we have the Tea Party, been around for about 2.5 years,
right.
0 arrests.
Right.
And now we have the Occupy movement, been around approximately a month, at least 1,000 arrests, violence against police, pooping in the streets of New York, having sex on the streets of New York, needles in a park. And now Republicans are saying, well, we kind of understand their frustration, which is exactly what the president started saying last week. And I'm very confused.
No, I understand a lot of people in this country's frustration. Now, do I understand exactly what these people are asking for? No, because there is no clear, concise message. But there is frustration, obviously, with Wall Street. What the perception is that a lot of rich people there. I mean, I voted against the Wall Street bailout, and it is frustrating to see all these federal dollars that have gone into to bail them out, and they're doing pretty darn well, and a lot of people out here are hurting.
Yeah, well, from that perspective, I was against TARP as well, right. From President Bush, and also against the "it's got to be done now" stuff, which of course then President Obama picked up with Stimulus 1. It's got to be done now, or the United States won't exist on Monday.
And Stimulus 2,
and now Stimulus 2, and
right.
now apparently Stimulus 3, which we're now referring to as investment. It just seems that what this is transcended into is the rich are bad and the poor are good. Aren't we looking at somebody trying to start quite literally a class war here?
I'm very frustrated with the message that the president is portraying out there all the time. And dividing Americans has never helped as far as moving this country forward. Whether somebody has worked extremely hard, they've been successful, and to somehow demonize them for their efforts, for them creating jobs. So you look at, speaking of jobs, Steve Jobs. I mean, someone who was a tremendous innovator, someone who made a lot of money, but every human being in this country certainly is affected by the genius that he had, and he should be rewarded for that. And that's what America is about, has always been about, the opportunity to have great success, and we shouldn't be limiting people's opportunity for success. And sometimes that comes with failure. Sometimes, start over, do it again, get it right, and hopefully you get lucky enough, and your genius is great enough, like his was, to be very successive, to make billions of dollars. Now, and they pay tremendous percentage of the federal tax burden, to demonize people who have contributed a great deal, have worked hard, been successful, changed the course of the country, I think is simply wrong.
Didn't Hershey fail 15 times before he was finally successful?
Look at people like Einstein.
Exactly.
The great inventors, Bell, all those folks.
Sorry, chocolate is close to my heart, Congressman.
Me too.
We are in studio with Congressman Tom Latham. We're going to take a very quick time out for some traffic and weather, and we will be right back at it. This is the Simon Conway Show, News Radio 1040 WHO. 284-1040, 800-469-4295. If you've got any questions for Congressman Tom Latham, he is more than happy to take them. And welcome back, Congressman. Thank you, sir. We appreciate having you in for an hour today. We've dealt a little bit with the Occupy Iowa people, but I also noticed today that we the people are yet again paying for the president to take a bus trip. Can anything be done about this? I mean, I have no problem with him campaigning. I understand he wants to be president again. Fair enough. But should he be campaigning on our dime?
This is the bus trip he's on now for 3 days in North Carolina and Virginia, which just happen to be states that will be very important as far as the next presidential election, is very similar to what he did when he came through Iowa, in the Canadian bus that he's trying to talk about American jobs. This really doesn't even pass the smell test. I mean, he certainly is campaigning, and that's what the media, having talked to people in the administration, these are important re-election states. That's why he's there. And he's masquerading, basically, is talking about getting the economy going and all this. But when you listen to what he's saying when he goes to these places, if it's not a campaign speech, I don't know what it is, because he's talking about partisan divide. He's trying to widen that divide, calling people out personally, and it's simply it's very frustrating. Now, there's always going to be, security-wise, any place the president goes, there's going to be some cost to the taxpayer. But in fact, call it what it is. Say if it's a campaign trip, say whether it's an official trip. If it's an official trip, would you talk about substance rather than politics? And I think that's what's frustrating a lot of folks, is that this is just blatant political trip masquerading as an official trip.
To the point where the White House is actually insisting that this trip is not political.
Well, listen to what he's saying.
I know. I am. It is truly remarkable. Can anything be done to stop this? I mean, can this trip be called into question? I mean, you're right. The president travels; he has to be protected. I want him protected.
Right.
Don't misunderstand me. I just don't. And we have to pay for security, even when he's officially campaigning. I get that, and I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem that this is masquerading, as you rightly say, as an important presidential trip when everybody knows it's a campaign trip.
Right. Well, and even, his people in the White House, talk about these are important re-election states as he's making this trip. What can you do about it? The president has great latitude as to where he goes, what he does, but I think the American people will look at it and see for what it is. And that's probably the most important thing that can happen, is that people understand that as he's out trying to basically divide the country, the war against each other here in this country, and he thinks that somehow that's his partisan advantage, is to separate Americans, is very ill thought out as far as I'm concerned. But I think the American people make that judgment. It becomes so blatant, I think that they make a determination that this really is something that they don't like. They don't like the partisanship. They don't like people trying to be even more divisive, and they will make that judgment.
I mean, you rightly point out that he's the president and he needs to be protected, and we've just covered that. But I simply don't remember another president deciding, for example, to take his wife on a date to New York City. Okay, which was a date. It was never anything other than a date, and the cost to us is just enormous at a time when the federal government has no money, literally has no money.
Right.
Is there any method to call the White House to account?
Well, certainly. I mean, you can have hearings. You could put some funding limitations. I will tell you, in some ways, though, I would be hesitant to restrict while I think is just a really bad visual. I think it's something that American people get very disgusted at. They still have to have a life themselves, as close to normal as possible, which is almost impossible in that position. But, they've got to be able to do things and as a couple. And I would be hesitant, I think, to put the kind of restrictions that keep them just inside the White House. They've got to get out and as close to see the world.
I'm not asking for that. I'm really not asking for that. I just think to get on Air Force One and go to New York for dinner is over the top. Right. Let's bring on a caller with us. Blake, you're on the Simon Conway Show with myself and Congressman Latham.
Well, hey, Congressman Latham. Hey, I can't wait till you run against Congressman Boswell. But in any event, talking about the president and living it up on our dime, I just think recently his wife and his two daughters went over to Africa and wrote it off on our dime and listed the girls, I believe, as senior White House aides or something like that.
Yeah, they were listed as senior staff. You're right.
Yeah, senior staff. And I wrote a letter to the editor, the Des Moines Register. It didn't get published because every time they go on a trip, how about taking two jets for his birthday party?
Right.
That kind of stuff. I mean, it just irritates us out here, and I'm not alone. I hear it all the time. But the theme from the Jeffersons comes to mind, and
Well, let's the congressman answer your question, Blake. But thanks for your call.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll listen on the air. Thanks.
Well, there's great frustration when going up to Martha's Vineyard for vacation, and they have to take two planes up there because she needs to be apparently
wouldn't wait 4 hours.
Wouldn't. I don't think it was like 2 hours that she would have had to wait. And the tremendous cost that the taxpayer incurs. There's things like that just, there's a lot of, one thing missing in Washington is a common sense. And this, I think, is just one of those cases where if you just had any common sense at all, you would understand that, if you're going to go someplace, there's no need to take two great big jets up there when you can both go together and take your family with you.
Absolutely. We're in studio with Congressman Tom Latham. Well, when we come back after this bottom of the hour news, we're going to be talking all things Iowa. This is the Simon Conway Show, News Radio 1040 WHO. Simon Conway Show here on News Radio 1040 WHO. We are in studio with Congressman Tom Latham. Before we get back to him, we have to have 60 seconds because we have not as yet caught up with those fine people at Washington General Hospital.